In this video, I'm going to talk about self-compassion and self-discipline and how you can get them to work together synergistically instead of seeing them as antagonistic to each other and contradictory. We need both of them. We need both self-discipline and self-compassion to embark in a powerful way on our self-development journey. One without the other, or misunderstood, they lead to predictable problems, which I'll talk about later. But it all comes down to our relationship with ourselves, how we treat ourselves, how we think about ourselves as we embark on the path of self-development. I'm going to apologize for the buzzsaw sound in the background that you may hear as we go along. There's a guy cutting things in the backyard, and I can't wait to make this video. I'm going to go ahead and make it anyway, so I apologize for the noise. Hello, my name is Michael Dwan Herrick. I'm a psychotherapist and a life coach with over 40 years of experience. And in that many years, it has become clear to me along the way that getting the relationship between discipline and compassion correct is really foundational. It really will make a big difference on how things turn out. If we get it wrong or misunderstand these things, it may not be immediately a problem. But eventually and inevitably, I've seen that it becomes a problem. So stick with me as we explore this topic. I think it will be useful to start from scratch and provide some definitions for the terms compassion and discipline. Compassion is often equated with comfort, to provide comfort to somebody. And discipline is often equated, well, the connotation for discipline is punishment. So let's focus on compassion a little bit. I would say that a better definition for compassion, a fuller understanding, is that it seeks to relieve unnecessary pain and suffering. Sometimes this will involve providing comfort, but sometimes it might not. Sometimes the pain and suffering that we experience is a motivational force that gets us to do things that we need to do in order to take care of ourselves. And if we're simply comforted out of that, we may not be motivated. Sometimes providing comfort to somebody can enable them to carry on doing things that are not particularly good for them. Drugs and alcohol, for example, or any other form of addiction. Also, the things that we may need to do to address our pain and suffering may themselves be uncomfortable, may even be painful. To help someone avoid doing these things, or even to help ourselves to avoid these things, is to delay the pain. It's to put it off for the future when it may probably accumulate and have to be paid for with more pain. The Tibetan Buddhist teacher Chogyam Trungpa called this idiot compassion, not true compassion. My point is that compassion isn't simply about providing comfort. It's about addressing pain and suffering, including an eye to the future, including what may happen later based on what we do now. Dr. Paul Ekman, who's most well known for having identified 6 or 7 universal human emotions and universal facial expressions for each of those emotions, has also done a lot of work on compassion. He identifies several kinds of compassion, but I want to mention 2 right now: proximal and distal. Proximal compassion means providing relief now, today, here. Distal compassion is the compassion that we offer, whether it's to ourselves or others, that has an eye on the future, that is aware of how things are going to develop and aims to keep suffering at a minimum also in the future. And so what do we need in order to do difficult, even painful things in the present for the sake of our future? Well, we might call it discipline. So there you have it. Compassion involves discipline. So compassion understood only as providing comfort in the present without anticipating the future and engaging in discipline sets us up for problems. So what happens if our definition for discipline tilts toward the idea of punishment and neglects compassion, neglects the need for comfort? Well, we tend to drive ourselves very hard. We run ourselves ragged. We think we need to be perfect and we push ourselves beyond our limits. Yes, it's good to push ourselves a little beyond our limits, but with this understanding of discipline, we go further than that and we do damage to ourselves. We wind up berating ourselves for not being perfect, and then we feel shame. As our shame rises, our motivation lessens, and we hit a wall, and then we just triple down on our discipline, and we push ourselves until we break something. It's either physical or psychological or emotional. We just stretch too far. I would say that a better definition for compassion, beyond just comfort, is a consideration of our distal selves, distal compassion. I would also say that a better understanding of discipline includes some emphasis on our proximal selves and our proximal well-being. So I think I want to start there with just a definition so that we're on the same page about what we're talking about when we're talking about self-compassion and self-discipline. Equipped with a better definition, let's go on and explore this further. So what can you do? How can you honor both self-compassion and self-discipline and get them to work together synergistically instead of being antagonistic to each other? Well, first, don't see them as antagonistic to each other. See them more like the Chinese symbol for yin and yang. They flow into each other. Each one contains the other. You might also think of them as the two wings of a bird, each one necessary for flight. Now I want to get down to some practical tips on how to do this. There have been books and articles and all kinds of material is available, both on self-compassion and on self-discipline. So I want to be simple, and I want to give you something very practical and start with a little bit of a framework for how to think about it, for the different areas that self-compassion and self-discipline can be practiced. And then, given that framework, you can fill that out over time with your own ideas. I propose that all of us have 4 basic areas in which discipline and compassion can be experienced and expressed. The body, the mind, our relationships, and our environment. And now I'd like to suggest some of the basic ways that we can bring both discipline and compassion to each of these 4 areas. Before I offer these suggestions about how to do this, I want to be clear about something. As I've already mentioned, it does seem that compassion entails discipline and discipline entails compassion. In some ways, it's hard to separate them out. I've separated them out for these examples to kind of take the perspective of their different emphasis. So just keep that in mind as you listen to these. You may hear some that sound like discipline when they're in the compassion category, and some things that sound like compassion in the discipline category. And that means you got it. you understand. So let's get on with it. In terms of our body, a few things that we can do for self-compassion is 1, get enough rest. Don't burn the candle at both ends. Get some sleep, get some rest, take a break. We can engage in enjoyable activities. We can savor sensual pleasures throughout our day. And we can seek comfort sometimes. Make ourselves comfortable. Sit in a comfortable chair. Relax. These are the things we can do compassionately for our body. In terms of the body and discipline, we can tend to our diet, eat well, we can exercise regularly, we can take care of our hygiene, we can develop physical skills, martial arts or yoga or some other physical skill, athletics that requires an effort and discipline. Those are the kinds of things we can do for discipline and body. In terms of the mind and compassion, we can focus on our gratitude, focus on the things in our lives that we're grateful for. We can check negative self-talk. Not all critical thoughts about ourselves, but those thoughts that are condemning then make us feel shame. We can notice they're happening and let them go. We can give ourselves the comfort of not torturing ourselves with those thoughts. We can also notice and remember positive experiences that we've had and successes that we've had. There are many ways we can discipline our minds. We can train ourselves to not be distracted by things that are less important and to stay focused on those things that are important. We can cultivate mindfulness, formally or informally, by training ourselves to notice what arises in each moment and not judge it, just to pay attention to it. We can also study things. We can learn things. To crack open a book and learn about some topic that we're interested in might require discipline. We might enjoy it, but we might have to make ourselves sit down and do it. In the area of relationships, we can be compassionate to ourselves by reaching out to people we trust when we need support and comforting. And we can further let them love us, let them provide some comfort to us, receive a hug, and let that make us feel better. And if we're tired of people, if being around people is not what we want, we could allow ourselves some solitude, some me time, some alone time, and give ourselves that compassionate space from other people's demands. And in terms of discipline in relationships, we might have to get ourselves to initiate a difficult conversation, one that we expect won't be very pleasant, but it needs to happen. We may need to learn and practice assertiveness skills and begin to take some risks about setting boundaries and asking for what we want. That might not be easy. That might require an effort. We might learn more communication skills like nonviolent communication, for instance. If you don't know about it, you might look into it. It's a form of assertiveness training. And what we might do is put ourselves in social situations where we're uncomfortable. You know, if we need to be compassionate with ourselves, we get personal space and we take a break. But if we're looking at discipline, we might get ourselves to go to some social event where we expect to feel uncomfortable, where we do it for the sake of developing more social skills. That could be discipline. Compassion in terms of environment could look like bringing yourself to or creating environments that are beautiful and comfortable and lovely and you enjoy being in them, and spending time in those environments. It could also mean provisioning yourself in your home, making sure you have everything you need. All the food, all of the tools, whatever it is you need, you're going to make sure that you have it. And it may be there's things that you don't absolutely need in your home, but they would make you feel better. A piece of art, a piece of furniture that costs a little too much, but it's very comfortable and you love it. That could be compassion for yourself in terms of your environment. And discipline in terms of the environment is fairly simple. I think Jordan Peterson got famous on one of his rules for life, which is clean your room. But yes, we can keep our home environment or our work environment clean and organized and tidy. We can fix things in our environment that we need when they're broken, and we can put things back where they belong when we're done using them. Just have a daily discipline of attending to the cleanliness, the orderliness, and the functionality of the environments that we're in. So these are just a few suggestions for the categories of body, mind, relationship, and environment, and the practice of self-compassion and the practice of self-discipline. You may have noticed they're all pretty common sense, and I'm not providing some complex thing here. My main point though is the structure of how you think about it, the areas that you look at. You can fill in better details at some other time, but that if you bring both compassion and discipline to these 4 areas, you'll create a synergy. You'll create a synergy in the way they relate to each other and support each other, and it'll accelerate your development. The thing I can't tell you is when to bring in the other. When your discipline is too much, or when your self-compassion is too comforting. That is something you have to figure out yourself. You have to feel your way into that. You can use your intuition. You can begin to look at how your life is going when you're emphasizing one or the other. But just to pay attention to that. It's really, I don't think what we do is just strike a balance and then that's what we do. We maintain that. We go along and then we tend to get out of balance. And then if we can notice that, we correct. We bring in a little more discipline when we're being too soft on ourselves. Or we bring in some softness when we're being too hard on ourselves. So we have to know ourselves. We have to tune into our body. We have to tune into our mental well-being and make those decisions. I can't tell you when to make that correction. I can offer some ideas, though, on how you can notice if your definition for compassion or discipline is a little off, or how you've gotten a little bit out of balance. You might notice these things. You might notice that too often you're making excuses for yourself for not doing things that you know you need to do. It's just a little bit too easy to let it go and come up with some rationale for that. You might notice if you do that, at some point your tolerance for frustration is low, and your tolerance for discomfort is low, and you're seeking comfort a lot and not able to deal with discomfort. Another thing that might happen is you might begin to see yourself as a victim. You might see yourself as just the suffering poor person who had all these things happen to them, and you need to be pitied and you need to be rescued, rather than figuring out what it is you need to do about it. So if you're really feeling like a victim, it may be that you're looking for more compassion and not enough discipline. On the other hand, if you're overly tilted toward discipline and neglecting compassion, the things that you're going to notice that you can pay attention to in order to make a correction is that you've pushed yourself too hard. You're worn out, you're stressed out, you're not getting enough rest, your body is you're starting to injure yourself or getting worn out. It may be that you're too rigid about when you're going to do things. There's not a sense of spontaneity, there's not a sense of playfulness in your life. Socially, it may be that you have so many boundaries about when you got to get off to the gym or got to do this and that you don't make room for friends or family, and you're just pushing. Another sign that you're overly tilted toward discipline is when you're obsessed with perfection and you're feeling a lot of shame because you're not achieving it, and then you're doubling and tripling down on your discipline in order to get the holy grail of perfection. If you notice you're doing that and then you're paying the price for it physically and emotionally, it may be you need a little dose of compassion. You need the other side. So these are just signs, and you have to read them for yourself and know when you've crossed a line and you need to seek some balance. I often talk about this in my other videos, but I feel it's important to mention it again here in this context, especially in terms of discipline. I think it's really important when we're going to go to the trouble to discipline ourselves for things that we know what we want in the future. That if we're concerned about our distal self and we're practicing distal compassion through our discipline, then what do we really want? Because too often, I think, we can wear ourselves out trying to attain things that we're not particularly connected to, that we don't have a passion or an interest or particularly love or enjoy for the sake of something less satisfying. So this is just a tip, around your discipline, to think about what you really want. What do you really want for your future self? Once you know that, then you can hunker down and really get disciplined. And I think what you'll find is that you'll get some joy out of your discipline. You'll get a lot more joy because you'll be doing things that bring you immediate gratification, along with all the delayed gratification you're hoping for in the future. So I wanted to make that point. And I can't end without making mention of another possibility. So far it sounds like, we're either too compassionate to ourselves, or we're too distant to ourselves, or we can find a balance. There's this other possibility, and I've seen it, and I think I've probably been there, where we don't have enough compassion, we don't have enough discipline. We have a little of either. And so we don't do the things that we need to do, and then we get really critical of ourselves, negative about ourselves, and we give ourselves a really hard time, and then we don't do anything about it. That's a really stuck place. That's a really unfortunate place to be, with very little compassion and very little discipline. If you should find yourself in such a place, I'd say start somewhere. Either start loving yourself more by softening your self-talk, or pick up a tool and get busy. Do something. Engage in a discipline. Don't stay stuck in that place where you're neither kind to yourself nor disciplined with yourself. Well, I hope I have made it abundantly clear that for our self-development, we need both self-compassion and self-discipline. In fact, if we really understand these terms, we understand that they're interpenetrating, that they need each other, that they express each other. They're just different points of view. Again, they're like two wings of a bird that have the same purpose, flight. And if we can identify what it is we care about the most, what we love the most, even what we have a passion for, and we can engage our discipline and our self-compassion in those terms, I think we really are going to set sail for some great places. May you find and engage both self-compassion and self-discipline. May those two wings take you on a soaring journey to amazing places. If you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe to my channel, share it with friends, leave comments. I would really appreciate it. I'm trying to grow this channel, and any support I get is greatly appreciated, so thanks. Below you can find a link to my online store, Attention Bazaar, and you can also find a link to my psychotherapy and life coaching practice if you're interested to check that out. And if it would be helpful to you to have a daily reminder to try to bring both self-compassion and self-discipline into your life, then find the links below for some mugs, t-shirts, and tote bags with slogans on them that could provide that reminder. Okay, that's enough for now. Be well. See you next time. Bye-bye.